Jack here, JBF Music and Guitar Lessons. So I don't normally bother speaking in these videos, I think they're normally self-explanatory enough, but with this one there's a lot of little hints and tricks you can use to make life a bit easier. Not saying that this is a shortcut that will get you there immediately, but these are things that I've learned from the many years of trying to play and master this riff, which I think is still a work in progress in terms of consistency, that I've picked up that I think can probably help out. So I mean, the first thing is, if you know this song, if you know the rhythm, which I think that rhythm probably came from the drummer Scott Travis, who played with Razor X and played with Judas Priest since Painkiller. So there's a lot of his kind of rhythms ended up working their way into the songs. In fact, the Painkiller one, the intro to that, the kind of drum fill he does at the start is a very Scott Travis thing. If you listen to more of his stuff with Razor X, that kind of rhythm pops up quite a bit. I mean, Scarified is one of those songs that's been just like a staple of kind of shred for the past 30 years. Like if you want to work on your shred chops, or you're looking for like an iconic shred song, that's a real go-to for most people still. But yeah, sorry, enough yammering there. The start is pretty simple. I'm just, to let you guys know, I'm playing it in standard tuning on the 2nd fret. I believe Racer X tuned a half step down. If I'm incorrect about that, I'll put some little annotations here. But yeah, in standard tuning, starting on the 2nd fret there, you've got that. And then the next move here, if you've kind of practiced 3-note per string shapes before, that shouldn't be too difficult. If, on the other hand, you're kind of new to this, I don't want to dive into it too much, but there's a pickslanting lesson that will link up there. But basically, you want your forearm to kind of be this way, and then you can either, right, I'll go for alternate picking first because that's what I started on. And then we're going to kind of, on this last stroke, use what you call an escape stroke. In fact, sorry, I'll switch to a white plectrum so you can see it better. So you can see in this last stroke, I'm going to rotate my arm like this, and what this means is I can get underneath the string for an upstroke, and back under here. So just to really exaggerate that movement when hopping over the strings. That's if you're using alternate picking, which is what I'll be doing in this lesson. Obviously you could economy. If you're using economy, you just stick with a kind of downward pick slant, and then kind of just come out the strings like that, retain the same thing. So that is worthwhile practicing this move in isolation. The other thing I'm going to say here before I forget is, like, employ some light to mild palm muting throughout this. It's just going to clean everything up. If we don't use it, so not only is the tone wrong, because you're getting this kind of like almost Telecaster-esque country kind of twang going on, the sound isn't right. So and also it just doesn't sound as clean as when you kind of mute the strings a little bit, because it stops the other ones kind of ringing out. So a little bit of light palm muting, rest in your palm. Play with it, because if you play through here, you're going to get like an Anthrax style, palm muting. So I'd start off with the Anthrax one, and when you start to get a lot more note definition, that's kind of where you want to be. Another trick that this is something that held me back for ages. I used to play with my arm really quite low as a natural resting point, so I'm exaggerating it here to prove a point. But I would find picking on these lower strings quite difficult, and my arm would kind of tense up. But the thing that's really helped me is just realizing my hand can be much further up here. And, you know, you can move down as you go through the string. So that first bit. To recap, the things I'm suggesting here are palm muting. Try experiment where you want this hand to be. For me, I like it fairly high up. And also this move here with that kind of wrist rotation to get over the strings. There's something else there that I need to mention as well, which escapes me at this moment. Okay, so there's a substantial monologue of me muttering to myself there, trying to remember what it was, so hopefully Future Jacks edited that out for you. But yeah, it's to do with pick angle, right? If we're flat picking like that, so straight down against the strings, you're going to struggle with that because you've got, if you think of it kind of like a kind of basic science point of view, basic physics points of view, we've got a lot of pick material hitting the strings, so it's going to slow it down. It's also going to make the string move more. If the string's moving more, it's harder to get consistent strokes on it because there's more of a kind of randomized factor. So experiment with the angle. The Paul Gilbert's old method was very much using like the edge of his pick. He'd kind of use here. If you look at videos of him, it's kind of apparent. He's got this kind of grip. I'm doing that kind of thing, so using the edge. You can use, you can trail the edge. I'll link up to Troy Grady's channel if you trailing edge picking and pick slanting, if that's not making any sense to you, check that out. It's a wonderful resource. I cannot give the guy enough credit for the fantastic work he's done for guitarists. But yeah, I tend to just angle it a bit this way. So down maybe, I don't know, whatever that angle is there, if you want to. 35 degrees maybe, something like that. Okay, so the next bit we've got here, the main thing I'm going to talk about is like not anchoring this hand or tensing it up, which it relates to the first bit as well, but because here we've got more of a position shift, it's more apparent. And also this stretch here, this isn't always the most wrist friendly thing, particularly the way I'm sitting. If I was sitting in the classical way, I'd probably get a bit better purchase. But don't be afraid to move your hand there. So rather than keep it locked in one position, it's a tiny move to go between these fingers. And you might have a big enough hand that you can do it without having to do a nasty wrist angle. I myself generally have to move this hand to help keep things a little bit nicer on my wrist. Yeah, so the other thing is I am alternate picking every note here. So when I come back to this, I'm doing a down, then I'm doing an up here for this kind of second half, and then down up through this. So we're just going up a 3-note per string scale. Again, when we're switching the strings here, alternate picking, you want to use an escape stroke here, and then kind of flip back to downward pick slanting for here. And then make sure you're downward pick slanting to get this inside picking, because when we're doing outside picking, you want to rotate your wrist this way, because we're inside picking, go between these strings, you need to flip round. And that for me is the main thing to remember. My wrist tends to lean this way just naturally, that's what it does. So I need to think about when I'm switching to downward pick slanting. You might be the opposite, you might be the same as me. So what I'll tend to do is think there that I'm switching to downward pick slanting, and then we have the same thing there. But this bit is really fast. I think sometimes this might just be hammered on, and if that makes life easier for you, just hammer on. I would suggest though employing a bit of muting still, because if you add it together, in context to that, you can't hear that it's hammered quite as much if you're continuing with the muting. You want to pick it, it's the same idea as the one we looked at down here. It's just a case of building up the speed and getting the consistency. It's this exact same move where we're kind of going down, up, down, and we're kind of rotating our wrist up. Just the exact same thing. Cool, so the final thing on this section here is you do want to end with some vibrato. For me, I'd add this in stages, so I just concentrate on getting through this bit cleanly. I didn't do it quite so cleanly there, so clearly back to the drawing board of it for me. But concentrate on getting that, this kind of triple bit. Once that's feeling more fluid, more together, think about that note. And if you're getting too hung up on the triplet bit, don't think about it, then focus on this note, which is the next thing I'm going to talk about, which is chunking. So think of this riff in terms of section. Initially, it's going to be kind of one note at a time, and then it'll be a bit of a kind of monolith thing. But for me, I think of kind of, that's just kind of one section for me now. My brain kind of compartmentalizes all those notes down to, I'm going to do this bit. Then we have the run, which I kind of think of as a different bit. And for me, this is the start point, this is the end point. As I say, I might need to concentrate to tell myself downward pick slant there, but I'm not really thinking of that bit as a separate part of the riff for me. I'm still kind of chunking that into one section. Cool, we then have a repeat of that very first bit. And then we have to do a bit of a jump over the strings here. Again, keeping kind of a nice controlled palm mute here. I suppose the other thing I will say is you want to experiment with how much gain and compression you have. I've probably got a little bit too much gain and a little bit too much compression. But in my defense, my guitar is incredibly exposed here. I don't have like any drums or bass or vocals or anything to hide. It is just the guitar sound. So I'm putting that on to make sure I can get the notes. If I play one a bit too softly, it's still going to come through fairly sound. So yeah, so far. And this isn't an easy thing to do. Like, I'm not going to edit that out because that was just a bit of a fluff note there when I hit here. That's what I'm saying. This is a difficult riff. It's hard to get consistent. Yep. And then we go on to a repeat of the first section in its entirety, and then we're back to this bit. The final bit, we have a bit of a jump here. So this is really similar to what we've been doing already. Here, rather than playing 3 notes and then doing your wrist rotation, you want to do it straight after this first note. So we're going down with the wrist rotation, up, down, up. This is where you'd go back to downward pick slanting, then another wrist rotation. Although you can also play this song, as I think Paul Gilbert does, on the spaceship thing. Is it Live from the Spaceship? You know, when he's in the orange boiler suits with Marco Miniman on drums and Linus of Hollywood on bass as well. I think. Anyway, you can play these 2 notes together as a double stop. Totally up to you. I would tend to opt for the vibrato to begin with because it helps with consistency between that first one and here. You're not having to remember quite as much. And again, this is something I'd build up in stages. I know this is a massive cliche, but keep it slow and keep your arm as relaxed as you can. So you're playing with just enough force that you're getting a nice clean sound without digging too much. I do prefer the sound of digging in, but with stuff like this, it's just not always practical. The huge thing that held me back when I was trying to learn this initially, one was that I just didn't have the technique to play it. I used to play between these fingers with a kind of a floating wrist. I could palm mute a bit, but it wasn't the easiest thing to do, and my inside picking or kind of, pick slanting between those two was virtually non-existent. So when I tried to do this song, I was so far away from being able to do it. I just didn't have the fundamentals down. And a good way to learn those is just to play it, as I say, as soft as possible, but so you're still getting a sound with your arm relaxed all the way down. Like if you start to feel tension, you might feel some in your bicep or your shoulder. Take your arm away and just kind of wiggle it at the side for a little bit and give yourself a minute rest before going back to it. Keep it slow and let the speed build. Sometimes it is good to try and run before you can walk as well, just to contradict everything that I've said for the past few minutes there. But try it at faster speeds as well, and hopefully you won't find yourself tensing up. But sometimes when you put it too fast, when you bring it back down to the actual speed, you find, oh, this is a bit easier to do. You don't have the same kind of borderline panic that we sometimes do when we're trying to squeeze all the notes in. So to recap all of that rambling, or for those of you that have just used the timestamps to jump here, totally fair enough. Getting this move down, that kind of pick slanting thing that we talked about, getting just the right amount of palm muting mixed with the right amount of right hand attack, so you're getting a solid sound without digging in too much, keeping this arm as relaxed as you can, and this arm as well, not locking it up over these kind of larger stretches, allowing you to move if that's what you need to do. Adding in the vibrato, and kind of building the riff in stages. Ideally, you want this to be as committed to muscle memory as possible, so that means you're not really thinking about what you're doing, you're just doing it. Alright, like I said in the kind of start of that, I don't normally talk over these learn riffs now, but this one seemed like really worthwhile going into a bit more detail because there's a lot to this one, I think. I mean, other ones like the Buckethead, Welcome to Buckethead Land, I have been tempted to do deeper dives on as well. So if you'd be interested in that, do let me know because I've come up with some little tricks in the meantime that make the hybrid picking a little bit easier than the chicken picking. All the tabs for these Learn Riffs Now videos are being uploaded to my Patreon. I do have a whole backload of stuff to get through, but if there's anything specifically you want uploaded, let me know and I'll just bump it straight to the front of the queue. So this has been Learn Riffs Now. It's a playlist there. If you want some more Paul Gilbert stuff, check out here. If you like this, click subscribe and stay up to date with things. And yeah, take it easy guys. Have a good one.